program on T31, the tactical action plan for winter spring. Joe, over to you.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much, Chris. And the Nashville story is one that I'll share at a different time over beers, hopefully at some point when I'm able to get back to Prince Edward Island. Thank you very much for having me here. It's always nice to see so many familiar faces showing up on the participant list and in the videos as well. So we're excited to share with you some of the strategy work that we've done with PEI over the last couple of weeks. In earnest, our strategy work actually started in, I think it was December of last year, of 2019, Chris, if I'm not mistaken, where prior to the pandemic, we were looking at ways to accelerate PEI's tourism strategy growth for the next 5 years. And we were probably about a month away from finalizing that project before the pandemic really became something that hit in earnest, and we had to pivot really quickly, not to use that word, but it seems like everyone is these days, and take a look at what we can do to potentially save what we can from the summer season based on everything that's going on around us. And then eventually, once we were through the summer season, we were then brought back in, given the information and the knowledge that we had to help support what the winter and the spring can look like. Ultimately, it's just important to note before we get into the presentation, we did take a deliberate effort to look at the strategy from a season by season perspective, just because it's in today's environment, given the unknowns and the unpredictability of the pandemic, it's hard to plan 1 year, let alone 5 years from now. And the season by season approach is something that enables us to be very tactical, keeping our long-term vision in mind, but we can get very tactical so that we can really touch on the needs of the operators of the destinations within PEI to the extent possible. So without further ado, as mentioned as well, if you have any questions, do get them in the chat. Greg's going to be moderating that for us, and we'll try to also answer any questions afterwards that we're unable to get to. So we have a couple of slides that we want to get through today. This slide actually just sets the context for why we are here today. And I think it's just important for us to, every meeting, every webinar, every Zoom that we've been in over the last 8 months, we start with the same thing, but it is important to start with this because it just puts us all on the same page, and that there is no doubt that the COVID-19 outbreak has been devastating to the tourism industry across the world. Many destinations have been really badly impacted. It's unprecedented. And to be fair to PEI and the Atlantic region, you're actually faring a lot better from the other destinations that we've been working with that have gone into really full lockdown and who have not admitted people from neighboring destinations for a while. And so just wanted to share that aspect as well. We're not expecting 2021 and this strategy that we're developing to get us back to where we were in 2019. In fact, it's probably going to take us about 4 or 5 years to get close to those levels. And one quote that I like to steal from Greg, although I think he's given me the rights to do that, is, even though now we are starting to see the light at the end of this pandemic tunnel with vaccines coming out, and we're hoping that the second and third wave that we're in right now is going to start subsiding as well, especially after the winter. The thing about tunnels is you never enter the tunnel or you never exit the tunnel from where you enter. So no matter where we end up in 2021 or beyond, it's going to look different from what we had in 2019. And that's important for us to keep in mind as we think about our businesses, as we think about our operations, as we think about our strategies and planning for beyond. And that's one of the reasons when we spoke with the tourism folks in PEI, Taipei, and the Taipei, and tourism PEI, we really needed to consider those assumptions in the work that we're doing. That things are changing, people's habits are changing, and it's really important for us to keep in mind what resources we have at our hands to make these decisions to support us as much as possible through 2021 and beyond. So With that, another sort of context setting slide that's part of the strategy that I believe will be shared ultimately with everyone here. Again, what we would like to point out in this particular slide, the important part is that this document is not meant to be, a solution that's going to solve everyone's problems. We're really just looking at what we have in front of us, which is season by season. We can only really plan for the winter and spring right now. However, having said that, we are also starting to plan for the summer, and that's hopefully going to get started in December, January. Hopefully, we'll get a good plan for the summer 2021, and then beyond that for the remaining of the year. Around that early next year, we'll have that as well, together with the tourism folks in PEI. So keep an eye out for that. Again, it's just very important for us to share that it's hard to plan long term, and that's why we took this very tactical approach. All right, what is the process that we use? So we use a 3-step process to get us to where we are today, and the strategy that we're sharing with you. It's because of the quick and changing nature of the pandemic and things that are going on. I think we presented this strategy for the first time 2 weeks ago to the steering committee. And we presented it again yesterday to the on Monday to the RTAs and the DMOs, and already information that we had from Monday morning had changed. And I think you're all familiar with the changes that are going on. So things are moving quickly. We wanted to put together a process in place that enabled us to come up with a strategy relatively quickly that was pretty comprehensive as well. And so the 3-step process is a pretty simple process that we use. The first one is to assess and analyze all the information that we had. The good news is by going with 2031 with the company that Greg and I work for, we already collected a good amount of information. If many of you may have been involved with those workshops back in, oh, sorry, if you're not, I think I was muted as well. Thanks, Gordon. So many of you have been involved with the stakeholder workshops that we held back in January, February, and March. If I'm not mistaken, there were about 150 participants across PEI, across the 3 areas that we focused on in PEI. We also we had an online questionnaire that went out, and a good number of interviews. We did a lot of desk research as well in preparation for that strategy. All of that to say, we have a lot of information already at our fingertips in terms of understanding what PEI's strengths and weaknesses are that we could play to in the recovery, as mentioned, for the recovery strategy that we developed for the summer, and then also for this new strategy going forward for the winter and the spring season. We also reached out to the 8 major tourism groups within PEI, the 8 RTAs and DMOs, and we asked them a couple of questions around what they see from their constituents, from their membership, as some of the major challenges and opportunities for the winter specifically, and for the spring. We reviewed all of that information. We assessed some of the plausible scenarios moving forward, and we then evaluated what are the real risks for tourism in PEI in the winter and the spring, and then what are some of the opportunities as well. And once we were able to do that and validate that with a team, we then were able to prioritize what those opportunities are based on some of the things that I mentioned earlier, some of the resource limitations that we have, the timing limitations that we have, and we were able to develop a framework for this strategy, sort of this umbrella idea. These are the brief speaking points, and I'm excited to get to those in just a bit. But as well as that, some of the tactical actions underneath each one that we need to address in order to continue to move forward in the winter and the spring. And then finally, once we did that, we were able to share our recommendations, and we're going through a series of presentations like the one today to make sure that this is communicated and that we're all marching in lockstep together. Because at the end of the day, it's really important that we're all aligned. And when I say all, I mean the government authorities, the tourism authorities, the tourism groups, as well as the business operators, because that's the only thing that's going to allow us to get through this pandemic together. Excuse me. All right, so before I move to the next slide, actually, what I would like to do is to show you a couple of the a couple of the challenges and the opportunities that were identified. There's a lot more as well, but it's important for us to at least make sure that we're somewhat aligned in terms of what these challenges and opportunities are. And these by no means are in any particular order. Again, there are more than what you have on the screen here, but it captures a good amount of the thinking and the thoughts that came from across stakeholders in PEI. And the first one, and again, before I get into it, we're thinking about winter and spring. PEI has typically been a summer destination. We were making some good inroads to getting into that shoulder season. We were expanding that little by little on either side of the shoulders. But really, we were seen as a summer destination. And so one of the first challenges that was identified for winter and spring is product availability. There are products that exist, market-ready winter products that exist, but in general, there's a lack of market-ready winter-specific products, and related to that, must attend festivals and events. So that's one of the challenges that came out that might impede our ability to grow, develop, and enhance tourism in the winter and spring. There are operator perceptions, and this comes down to a lot of us who think of what we do and the work that we've done traditionally in the past for the last several decades to really be summer focused. And so it really takes the shift of mindset to say, I'm going to move beyond just focusing on the summer, and I'm going to extend my season a little bit, or maybe I'm going to tweak my product or my experience a little bit in order to provide a winter product. So it does take a bit of a mindset shift as well as operational shift, which we'll get into in a little bit as well. There's stakeholder confidence, and those are all stakeholders, and this is just by virtue of the pandemic that we're in. It's an unknown nature of COVID. We have a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, as we mentioned earlier, now with some of the vaccines coming out, but the timing is still we're still uncertain. We still don't know when things are going to get back to normal, if there is such a thing, or what that normal might actually look like, and that's causing a lot of lack of confidence with stakeholders across the board. There's operator liquidity as well as a challenge. So, we've mainly been used to setting up and operating our business in the summertime where, excuse me, where costs are low. I'm just going to take a quick glass of water and get rid of this frog in my throat. All right, sorry. I've been presenting this strategy a lot. So, excuse me, operator liquidity. So that's another one where we understand, especially in the winter and the spring season, that because we haven't had the opportunity to really test that out in many instances, is causing us and costs are typically, or at least perceived to be higher during that period. There's a potential that our ability to manage our businesses in the winter and the spring will not be as lucrative as it typically is in the summertime. Add to that the volume of visitors is way lower. We're potentially testing and trying new things as well. It puts for a pretty good challenge in front of us. And then add to that as well, what you have in the middle there, the COVID-19 adaptation. So not only are we trying to figure out how to run our businesses, the volumes are lower, but we're also probably trying to change the way that we do business because capacities have changed. And that's, whether you're a restaurant, accommodation, whether you're working with festivals and events, meetings and conventions, a lot of things that we now have to put in place because of COVID are changing, and they're changing the way we do business. By the way, there is some silver lining to all of this, which I'm going to get to in a little bit, not to sound completely bleak over here. Marketing challenges as well. So there are, because of the Atlantic bubble, there's challenges in terms of who we're able to go out to, geographic market restrictions. There's local tourism advocacy that we need to also promote and keep on pushing through. And then in fairness, there's also this competition and lack of compelling, unique winter selling proposition. Again, everyone knows PEI for what we do in the summertime really well, maybe a little bit in the shoulder time with some of our events and festivals. But do we really separate ourselves from the other regions, especially in the Atlantic bubble, when it comes from a competitiveness perspective? Is there something that we own that no one else owns that we can use to say, hey, why don't you come to PEI in the winter and the spring? And so there's a challenge there. It's not impossible. There are a ton of things, and we can certainly brainstorm through some of those more. We'll share some of them today. But PEI does have a lot to offer us. So it's just a matter of acknowledging that challenge and trying to figure out a way to address it. We also talk about labor gaps as being a challenge. Obviously, in the summertime, we have a lot of students who support, a lot of interns and things like that. Everyone goes back to school, everyone goes back to work, and making sure that we have enough labor after a potentially exhausting period in the summer time. It makes it a little bit difficult to make sure that we have the labor who can support us all throughout the winter and the fall, and the spring. And then the planning environment. So similar to labor in that it takes time, it takes effort, it takes collaboration to plan. And it's just difficult to plan right now together for the long term. So again, a challenge that we've identified is how do we plan as businesses for the long term? And then finally, the last major challenge that I'm going to talk about today is around that accessibility. And I don't think we need to dwell too much on that, but just general severe restriction of air accessibility and closure of ferries and bridge subject to weather and all kinds of things like that. So there are quite a few challenges that we needed to first understand, prioritize in order to then figure out what the opportunities are. I will say the silver lining here that's worth mentioning before I get into opportunities is that COVID, the challenges that we are seeing related to COVID is providing us an ability to think outside the box in times that, or in normal times, we might not have thought outside that box. Just to give a very quick example and maybe a little generic, but Airbnb was born from the 2008 recession because of a need for less expensive housing and accommodations in major cities like San Francisco. And what we're seeing here is that there are certain needs that need to be met coming out of COVID. There's going to be new businesses that are going to be created and that are going to address those needs. The other thing that we're seeing is that operators are now interested in potentially trying new things. We haven't had the gangbuster summer that we typically had this last summer. So maybe we're staying open a little bit longer. Maybe we're trying to see if we do have the ability to operate in a little bit more into that shoulder period, into the winter period, and potentially into the spring as well. So there are a couple of little nuggets of silver linings like that we'll try to touch on as well that we're seeing across. It's across PEI, but across the nation and across some of the other destinations that we're working with as well. So in terms of the opportunity, so I think enough bleakness there in terms of the challenges. Important for us to make sure that we're all on the same page there. But there are a good number of opportunities for us to address as well that came out of our consultations. And again, these are in no particular order. But the first one is around sports tourism. And we had some really good tournaments in the spring and the summer. We managed to hold them in a COVID atmosphere, and they were wildly successful. And we believe that there is a really good opportunity for us. So again, we have the infrastructure to continue to build on that and capitalize on sports tourism in particular. So that was one that sort of stood out to us based on what everyone was talking about. Then there are things around product development, and some ideas that came out around product development are to develop new and or enhance Christmas related products. No one really in Canada owns Christmas. Maybe there's an opportunity to do that with Christmas markets across communities, or a month-long Christmas theme, or whatever you might have. And I'll let the folks at Tourism PEI and Taipei talk a little bit more about that. But there's just such a good potential to develop something around Christmas. I will say something that PEI does really well is that whole, I think in Denmark they call it hygge, which is that that coziness, that sitting around the fire, looking outside the window, reading a book with a warm cup of tea or hot cocoa or something like that. And that warmth is something that PEI does really well. Is that something that you can also combine with some of the products that that already exists and some of those experiences that already exist. We talked about sports tourism products and experiences. So even though the sport competition might actually take place, it's everything else around that that we can potentially develop and build, like culinary, like other experiences, support and enhancement of the Jack Frost Festival. So is there a way to continue to expand that, make that a little bit bigger? There are craft alcohol themed campaigns, winter, spring season monthly themes that bring together urban and rural communities. So how do we pull folks in? I know with Chris, we talked a couple of times about using February as being a month for lovers with Valentine's Day. Can we build on that to promote some of the experiences and products that we have on the island as well, especially geared towards couples and that leisure and relaxation that PEI offers so well. We also talked about opportunities around promotion and packaging. So very much there's an opportunity to focus on the staycation model and going back to this Activate Our Island campaign that we once had for visitors within the bubble and creating winter packages. So that's something that we can certainly build upon. A little something for everyone. While not everyone might want to go snowshoeing, maybe other members of the family might want to stay and enjoy a spa. So how do we put together packages that that consider that for the winter and the spring? We talked about the Canada Food Island gift card program as a good promotion and package, if you're familiar with that one as well. And then we also talked about hosting meetings and small regional conventions, again, for within the Atlantic bubble, understanding that the recent announcement as of Monday might hinder us for just a couple of weeks, but it's something that we can certainly build upon as well. And we can create entire packages around that to include culinary and other experiences, cultural experience, art, etc. as well. There are some non-traditional niche markets, number 4 on the list here, that we can go to as well. We talked a lot about sports teams and sports enthusiasts, but there are also a good number of winter leisure travelers. I don't think we talked about snowbirds, for example, yet, who would typically go down to Florida. Well, guess what? They're not going down to Florida this year. If I'm not mistaken, I think the expression goes, it takes 21 days to create a habit. Well, in this case, we're going to be going on 8 months of, or 9 months of COVID to create different habits. And can we get folks to actually see PEI as more of a prestigious exotic destination as well, that they could possibly go to, that can meet some of those needs? And ideally, and this is another one of the silver linings to add to the ones I mentioned earlier, to potentially keep that habit up for PEI beyond just 2020, 2021, but going into 2022 and beyond then as well. Can PEI be a winter leisure destination? And then, of course, things around a family winter vacation and March breaks, that we could certainly build some products and experiences for the niche markets that might be interested in or who might be taking some time off during that period of time as well. Marketing opportunities, again, there's some marketing opportunities around sport tourism and niche market campaigns. We talked about hosting media like ET Canada or CTV Morning Live to showcase what PEI is like in the wintertime. And again, to me, it's amazing. So I'm sure a lot of people will find it amazing then too. It's just a matter of being able to show what that is. Messaging around being a safe travel alternative. And we'll get to the initiative around that safety and standards around some of the safety that we're putting in place for COVID as well. And then building winter tourism assets. So making sure that we, traditionally, because we're a summer destination, a lot of our marketing and brochures and all that show beaches, show sunny weather, really nice golf courses and things like that. But we need to show what the destination is actually like in different periods of time where the weather isn't always great, but we're yet embracing that there are storms that come through, that there's snow on the ground, there are other things that are happening, and we need to just build that collateral to provide to you, the operators, and anybody else who needs it, to support your brochures, your marketing campaigns, your websites, etc. And then, of course, continued operator education. This is, this forum that we're in right now is sort of the beginning of a good number of series of communications that tourism organizations and PEI are going to be supporting to support operators and making sure that we understand what's needed. We figure out what those gaps are, and we try to address those gaps. So related to that is operator support. Final one is, and this is mainly around, so in addition to understanding what the operator needs are, is also understanding what is going on from a governmental perspective in terms of stimulus funding and grants and other things like that. Understanding what some of the wage subsidy programs are, what's available to us, understanding what else is going on from entry restrictions to identified niche markets and things like that. So it's bringing all, bringing what we have, but also what the government in general has at our fingertips to be able to share that with the operators. And not only that, it's also taking the operator needs, understanding that, and taking that to the government so that the government can also make decisions that would support the industry because of how valuable this industry is. So I know that was a little bit long-winded. I thought that was important for us to go through the challenges and opportunities so that you can actually track what we're doing from a strategy perspective a lot better. All of this comes down to a couple of key pillars and a couple of initiatives for the strategy. And all of it links to, at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do, our objective is to protect the supply, essentially to protect you in order to make sure that once tourism does come back, we do have operators who are excited, who are strong, and who are willing to continue to keep going. So the first thing as part of the strategy, though, in order to protect that supply, is just boosting that leadership support. And that leadership support is really just, we're talking with PEI, we're talking with Tourism PEI, we're talking with some of the other tourism organizations and authorities in the island, making sure that there is this continuous communication, especially on the part of Tourism PEI, and ensuring that this communication includes the fact that we have a strategy so that we can all march in lockstep together towards the same objectives. In addition to that, boosting leadership support is going out and doing what we just talked about in terms of opportunities, identifying what's available for the tourism industry, for operators from a government perspective, from a needs perspective, and making sure that we're lobbying the government and sharing some of that information as possible and when that's needed by the operators. So that first one, boosting leadership support, the outcome is really to outline options to protect the supply and stimulate demand and keep key stakeholders appraised of actions. It's really just about alignment. That does support number two, which is stimulating demand. So we don't want to lose track of the fact that we're all more or less in this business because we need to earn a living, we need to survive. And that will not happen without demand. Unfortunately, the demand is not what it used to be, and that's why the goal isn't to maximize demand. We'll do our best. That might have been a goal for 2019, but right now is just ensuring that there is enough demand to ultimately continue to protect the supply, to protect you. And in terms of stimulating the demand, there are a couple of initiatives that have been identified. And the first one is just to conduct research on winter and spring market. Right? Because we've mainly focused on the summertime, we really don't know our winter and spring season that well. Now, the good news is when we developed the strategy a couple of weeks ago, Chris and team were right on it, and there's some information that they're happy to share with you later today in this meeting as well. So a good amount of research has already been conducted, and that should help some of the decision makers across all the stakeholders make some decisions for the winter and the spring. So market research, that was one of the first things that we needed to understand. What do people who actually come here in the winter and the spring want? What do they need? And who are they? Number two is development and or enhancement of enticing winter spring products. So again, there's a good number of products out there. In some cases, we need to develop new products, but it's how do we bring this all together and keeping the community in mind? There is a real focus on sort of that rural and urban center. It's important for the community to come together and say, well, maybe you can spend a couple of days in Charlottetown, but then you can then have these other experiences in other places around it as well. So it's really just putting all of this together for a winter and spring season and focusing on the winter and spring. Then it's once we have that, we have some of the basic building blocks to say, okay, well, let's go out to the markets and let them know what we have to offer, because it might be interesting for them. So the first market that we have at our fingertips is the Atlantic bubble. So there are some campaigns that we're working on for the Atlantic bubble specifically. And nevertheless, we want to be prepared for what happens when we do open up more fully. So it's not necessarily launching the campaign itself, but it's ensuring that we are prepared with a campaign for when the doors do open up to other areas within Canada, potentially coming up in the spring, hopefully in the summer as well. So just being ready with what that campaign may look like based on everything that we have to offer. So all of that, so boosting leadership support, stimulating demand, all of that, it really comes down to what we ultimately want to do is number 3, protecting the supply. And the first thing that we need to do under protecting the supply is getting an understanding for what the supply is right now. Who is who is open, who is closed, who is in pain, who needs support, and understanding what that is so that we can have a better understanding of what are the types of experiences and products and areas where we need to put some additional help into. So that's the number 1 initiative there, is doing an operator inventory, understanding what the status is of operators across the island. Number 2 is to provide those operators, especially small and medium-sized businesses, with the support that might be required, whether it is the audio, visual things that we were talking about before, whether it's providing some coaching, whether it's providing information, whether it's providing that market research that we've collected. So making sure that we are providing some of that information to the small and medium-sized enterprises across the island. And number 3, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier as well, that there is also some work being done to provide tourism standards and certifications for operators. That serves a dual purpose. The first one is it increases confidence in our operators themselves, saying that we are ready to welcome visitors, but it also can be used as a marketing tool to go out to the potential travelers and visitors to say, actually, we have pretty stringent certification standards in place. These are the operators that have passed it. So you can feel more comfortable traveling to our destination. And that's something that Chris will touch on as well. So all of that, the outcome is to support operators and tourism industry to remain competitive and viable for full recovery post-COVID-19. So that's sort of what our basic objective was and how we're going to get there. Just a couple more slides, probably 2 more slides, and then I'll stop talking. The next slide also shows that we didn't just throw those initiatives up on the board and we said, good luck in terms of the leadership team here. We also have very much a plan and a pretty detailed plan. This is actually a little bit more high level. It shows what we are interested in doing in the next 1 month, 2 months, 3 to 4 months, keeping in mind that when we said the next 1 month, that was already about a month ago. So a lot of these things have already taken place, and the team at Tourism PEI will go over that. And then a certain number of things that we're starting to take on here that you see in next 2 months, and then some more things that we could take on in months 3 and 4. I just want to present one more slide to you, just so that you get an idea for the level of detail that we're getting into each one of these initiatives. So that tactic number 1 under that first pillar of boosting leadership support, so continuous tourism PEI leadership and industry communication, there's a good rationale for why this is here and some of the actions within it that we're doing, the time frame and the trigger, who the responsible parties are, and what the outcome is, so that it's measurable as well. So that at the end of the spring, when we look back at the strategy and we say whether we've been successful, whether we've been able to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish, we can say yes, we have, or we have not. So and then that exists for all the other initiatives that we outlined as well. So that is the gist of the strategy, and I think we are open to questions at this point. Chris, I saw a lot coming through the chat. I think Greg was helping to answer some of those.
That's great, Joe. I think what we'll do is we'll turn it over to Greg, and you've moderated some of the chat communication, Greg. So if you want to highlight some of those questions for Joe.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I will. There are a couple questions and a couple of perspectives here, Joe. I just wanted to jump in and just suggest that the dynamic nature of this. I mean, we know that we were projecting for marketing within an Atlantic Canada bubble. We know that changed yesterday. We know and we expect that many things will change over time. It may change in our favor, it may not change in our favor. And that's the nature of this challenge that we're facing right now. So know that I think that there's some scenario planning within this strategy, and there's some flexibility in the strategy to support that. Yeah, a couple of questions. The first one is, Joe, it has been a long time since you've been to PEI, about 9 months. And the PEIers would like to remind you that they don't just drink cocoa in the winter. There are some other beverages that are available in PEI. Many of them they're all like looking at you like, cocoa? Who drinks cocoa in the winter here?
I was trying to stay PG. I wasn't sure who was on the line.
What is this, Salt Lake City or something? Anyway, so they have a number of craft beverages in PEI, and there's some discussion and questions around on those craft beverages and how interesting they were. And just on an aside, I sat in on a hospitality and food and agritourism conference yesterday, and they were very clear that craft is a thing. Craft beverages are a thing that we're starting before the pandemic and have accelerated into the pandemic, and they're actually significantly eating into more of those standard brands themselves. So there is quite a high level of demand for craft, and so not a bad idea to continue going forward. There was a question, I think, about potential product development when it came to Atlantic Canada beach winter trail experiences that could be developed. And I'm not sure if anybody can jump in on that specific plan, a beach trail experience with, I think it's PEI National Parks. Is that something that's being considered right now? Is that something that falls out of our strategy and in terms of our tactical plans? Anybody at Tourism PEI have a?
No, the only thing I can say, Greg, is that we do have ongoing discussions with Parks Canada around utilization of some of their assets, and particularly in terms of our own assets, whether it's our downhill ski hill or our Nordic Center, that we're looking to activate as much as we can for the winter.
Okay, good. Well, then people on the call today may want to flesh that out a little bit more, just to find out what other more advanced opportunities there might be. So I think that we can go from there. Some questions around, there are a couple of regions within PEI, of course, that have been focusing on winter for quite some time, both in Charlottetown and Summerside, and so they're great resources. We did this call, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday, and learned of a whole bunch of new creative assets that support winter, some really great images and photos. So a concentration on winter. So it's, in many instances, it's not necessarily developing brand new products, but really enhancing or bringing to the surface some of the products and experiences that are already in existence that we can focus on. Let's see what else here.
So a couple of good questions here, Greg. So the first one, well, I think you just talked about it, Charlottetown and their partners, Discover Charlottetown and their partners like the City of Charlottetown have worked hard to try to market Charlottetown as a vibrant year-round destination. So, fully backing that up. And again, talking about some of the silver lining with COVID is actually giving us an opportunity to think more holistically across the island now as well. So hopefully, it is very important that we all sort of work on this together, and again, an opportunity here to do that, and we hope that will continue into the future as well. Another good question from Leslie: what is the time frame of the initiative? I keep hearing winter activities. What about spring? And yeah, I think our minds are focused on the winter because of everything that is it's right around the corner, and our minds have been focused on that. But I think there are some initiatives in the spring as well that Tourism PEI can talk to with regards to some of the thinking around the spring. This is a really good comment from Wayne Long, City of Charlottetown. So Charlottetown is currently ranked as the #1 sport hosting destination in Canada, 3rd year in a row for our population size, and number 6 in the country, regardless of population. So, that, to me, that just continues to support our thought of being a sport tourism destination and continuing to build on that. It does seem like there's really quite a bit of potential there. And if we can move some of those sports tournaments that might happen in the summer into the fall or into the spring, maybe even into the winter, then it gives us an opportunity to use that as an anchor for tourism product and build around that as well. Let's see. Anything else coming in? There's a lot of comments coming in at this point.
Yeah, and I'll jump in and again, just a really a re-push for working very closely with the parks and using those assets year round. It has happened in the past, and it should continue to happen going forward. And there's just this idea, and I like this idea that Sandy talks about, is dreaming bigger, becoming maybe the Tofino of the East with national parks and the beach trails, storm watching, hiking, and those types of things. Again, taking that sort of risk that Tofino took about 20 years ago, and then creating a very, very strong winter destination as a result, just simply because of the natural assets that they had. And there's no reason why there's not opportunity for PEI to do the same thing. So there's a longer term ideas, of course, but there's no time like a crisis to start working and planting those seeds now. Yeah, so there's a couple of those. Yeah, and then another comment about while marketing and sales strategies are important, investment in operator financial support, which is protecting that supply, product maintenance and development, because they have simply no funds left to do that. And that's the one reason and the one way that we have to protect supply. So always keeping a consideration on the support for that supply, and not and some really meaningful programs to keep them vibrant.
Greg, one thing I'd like to add as well that I didn't really touch on today, but I think I did on Monday. So separately from the work that we're doing with Tourism PEI, Greg and I have been involved with a program coming out of TIAC, Tourism Industry Association of Canada, where Canada is looking to do better in terms of expanding their peak summer season, their peak season beyond the summer into the shoulder and winter. So it's a shoulder and winter tourism in development and enhancement program, and we spoke to around 40. Well, we have 48 workshops across Canada. I think it's around 25 destinations across the destination, and we've probably gotten about 80% through those workshops. So we've spoken to a good number of destinations across Canada, and one thing that is coming out to me as an important lesson from that's just important to share here as well, is that it doesn't have to be a full on a full strategy, a full effort, everyone all hands on deck kind of thing. It's okay, especially during this time of COVID, to start incrementally. And in this case, I know we always say think big, but in this case it might be okay to say think small. Let's start creating smaller clusters of events, of products, of festivals, etc. Throughout the island, and start connecting those. And then once we have that smaller demand that comes, that will hopefully bring bigger demand as well. So I don't know if that was clear, Greg. I don't know if I explained that well, but it's an opportunity for us to try and address what's going on with COVID. It will potentially help us beyond COVID as well, and it's okay to start incrementally. And I think that's applicable to operators as much as it is to destinations as well.
Sorry folks, we were on mute there. Thanks very much, Greg and Joe, for that presentation. That was excellent. I understand there's still a number of outstanding questions, and we'll follow up with you guys later and post those responses. In the interest of time, we're going to move to the second part of the presentation, and we'll let Joe and Greg get back to work on the file, and we'll turn it internally now to a presentation by Tourism PEI.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to hand the hosting off to you, Corinne, and thank you all very much for the comments and the questions and for your engagement today. Thank you all.
Yeah, have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, as we transition into the second part of the program this morning, first of all, you can see from the picture at the top, wherever our picture is, we're at the Taipai boardroom with Corinne, and she's gonna, I will say thank you to her to help organize this, and we'll talk more about the efforts of TIPI and Tourism PEI as we go through the presentation. So we're loading up a presentation. Struggling.
Don't have PowerPoint?
We had that one.
It was a PDF. That's okay though. We can open the PDF.
All right. Technical difficulties not beyond our control, though. So let us begin with presentation. We've got a presentation here, and I'm going to go through some introductory comments. We're going to turn it over to Keith Hansen to talk about research and where we are with some of the research initiatives, bearing in mind that we've got another session planned for next week, which will be a deeper dive into some segmentation analysis. And we also have Brenda Gallant, who's going to talk a bit about marketing, the marketing program. So without further ado, slide 2 there, Keith. First of all, we're going to provide an update on planned and ongoing work at Tourism PEI that supports the implementation of this recently adopted tactical exercise. This was approved by the Tourism PEI Board of Directors a few weeks back, and I will say that staff have been working diligently on the execution of a number of initiatives. I think I would be remiss if I didn't say when the time is right, you're going to hear those words quite a bit throughout this exercise. Time is shifting, events are shifting around us from moment to moment, from day to day, and we're trying to be as nimble and action oriented as possible. Strategic direction. Next slide, Keith. So strategic direction, folks. This is the adoption of the Winter Spring Tourism Action Plan, and it really provides PEI with a single overarching framework for all tourism stakeholders. It's important to realize that this is not just a Tourism PEI action plan. This is one that we all need to get behind and move forward. The plan provides clarity on the direction that is being taken for the Winter Spring 2021 season and facilitates the organization of our collective efforts. The plan really focuses on 3 key areas. First is around improving communication. Second, protecting the supply. And third, generating and driving tourism demand. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over the details of the plan itself. 2031, Joe's done an excellent job, I thought, of presenting that to you. I will say that the document itself will be posted soon on the website, and we'll communicate that with each of you when that's available, but we expect it to be posted soon. Next slide. Now, in terms of ongoing work, I will say that the action plan is being released today, and our collective work to support the tourism industry has been ongoing. Tourism PEI has already initiated several pieces of work that align with and support the implementation of this initiative. First one I want to talk about is improving communication. We certainly recognize the need and desire for improved industry communication and have made this a key area of strategic importance. We are working with TIPI and our industry tourism organizations, whether it's the RTAs and DMOs, to improve the accessibility and dissemination of tourism information. And I'll have more information on that in a few slides in. TIPI is going to take the lead in organizing a number of webinars. Today's the first of many. And these will be webinars or workshops that will help inform and provide you, the operators, with the necessary intel to move and advance your business. Tourism PEI and tourism organizational partners will all support TIPI in this initiative. Today's session is meant to be the first webinar of a series of many. Second area that we focused on is protecting tourism supplies. For many of you, you should be aware that we've commissioned MRSB, local firm of consultants, to undertake what we call, for lack of better terminology, a gap analysis of the financial programs that have been made available by both the province and the federal government since the start of this pandemic. And that initiative, the objective was really to focus on what's working well, what's not working well, and what are the gaps that we need to help operators survive and come out of the pandemic in a very stable financial position. We focused on support programs, identification and gaps, and we expect to have the results of that document released over the next few weeks. We have been back and forth with the federal government and working internally in terms of shaping those programs. So we're hoping with information, as I say, in the next couple of weeks to make some announcements on that. Generating tourism demand has been the second area of key focus, and there are a number of ongoing initiatives there. First of all, we commissioned a piece of work by Dave Bryantton Consulting to look at winter tourism development opportunities. Dave Bryantton Consulting has handed over his document to us. We're going through the exercise. And it really looked at the available market research and intelligence to identify winter tourism development opportunities for Prince Edward Island within the context of COVID-19. This work included a scan of what's going on in Canada and other jurisdictions, and really taking the best and making it applicable to Prince Edward Island. That top line report of Brian's consulting work is available on our website at the present time. Other areas that we've spent some time is looking at sport tourism, and we've worked with the partners, our Chief Public Health Office. We've worked with the department responsible for sports. We've worked with Sports PEI and City of Charlottetown and the City of Summerside on a document called Return to Sport Tournament Play. That document was filed with the CPHO office last week. And obviously, with the change in border restrictions, we continue to monitor and have active dialogue. The anticipation is in the new year that we can return to some semblance of sport tourism. Why we're involved is it generates about 25,000 room nights in the province, so it has a deep interest in us to see this resume. We're also working with Meetings Conventions PEI, Susan Freeman's group, looking at how we activate small, medium-sized conventions within the Atlantic bubble, and more work, and that work is ongoing, and hopefully we can see the fruits of that work in the new year. In terms of the leisure side, we've got some work done on the visitor segmentation, and Keith Hansen from our research group will go through that. We've created 4 customer winter visitor segments, and we've also developed 2-page personifications of each of these visitors. And as I say, we'll be sharing that in the next few minutes. In addition to that research, we're also working with Destination Canada on a COVID-19 travel intention and consumer behavior study. That work is ongoing. We expect to see results, the final results in April 2021. But many of you should be aware that we have posted various iterations of that when it becomes available on our website. In addition, Tourism PEI and the Atlantic provinces will be working on an inter-regional travel study. That work is expects to be ongoing, and that will provide some idea of who's traveling within the Atlantic bubble area. I will say that once we finish up today, we've got a number of pieces scheduled for December, where we will start in earnest with the planning, a tactical planning exercise for season 2021. So gives us a week to get this information out, then we start the next iteration of strategic planning. So maybe with that, I'll pass it over to Keith Hansen.
Thanks, Chris. All right, folks. I'm happy to report, as Chris has just mentioned, that we've completed doing the PEI winter visitor segmentation exercise. The purpose of this exercise is to inform efforts to generate tourism demand from the leisure market within the Atlantic bubble during the winter spring 2020-2021. Before I introduce the segments, I just want to recognize the considerable efforts of Bradford Rooney, our data analyst at the office. Bradford's been with Tourism PEI since September and was instrumental in being able to do this exercise and provide it to industry. So without his capacity, we probably wouldn't have this today. You'll be able to meet Bradford, who will be providing a more in-depth overview of these and how to read the personifications and use and interpret them on Monday, November 30th. So if you haven't signed up for that webinar yet, I encourage you to reach out to PEI through Corinne's office here and get yourself on that list so that we can go over this in greater detail than we have time for today. So what are visitor segments and how did we make them? Tourism PEI's winter visitor segments represent the geo-demographic targeting of visitors based on socioeconomic factors. That is, they go beyond targeting a particular geography like New Brunswick or a particular age group like seniors, for example, to combine and overlay a number of defined factors and segment visitors based on those variables, which then can be mapped to geographic areas based on postal codes. Tourism PEI worked with Environics Analytics to facilitate the development of these winter segments. Environics is a big data analytics and marketing consultancy with offices throughout North America. They work with some of the largest companies like Walmart, General Motors, and TELUS. And they've also worked with our Destination Canada national marketing body or destination management body to do a similar exercise at the national level. We've secured access to a number of Environics databases, including consumer data and lifestyle databases. We've also secured the use of Envision, a market intelligence platform or tool created by Environics, which lets us segment and locate consumers. Envision lets us integrate our own data with the data that we've secured through Environics databases, overlay them together, and create custom segments. A subset of the Atlantic Canadian population was identified as the best fit for defining a potential PEI winter visitor. Within the context of COVID-19 in the Atlantic bubble, and based on Tourism PEI's visitor exit surveys, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island was the population used to benchmark segmentation themes, behaviors, and traits. That doesn't mean we are not able to target other geographic areas. It's just being used as the area to define the best potential type of visitor. So we defined a number of variables or themes to build the custom visitor segments. This includes demographic factors, family composition, past visitation and likeliness to visit, seasonality of trip, urbanity, and income. So another way to look at this is these are the factors that we use to identify and then compare and contrast the visitor segments against each other. So meet PEI's custom winter visitor segments. The first segment we named active families. And so active families tend to be middle-aged families with kids at home. They live in suburban areas and work across a variety of sectors. They're always on the go, juggling work and extracurricular activities. Active families have high rates of repeat visitation. They often stay in hotels and have an average length of stay of 3.6 nights. Active families are likely to participate in ticketed events, but also have a high attraction to nature and likely enjoy outdoor parks, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, and hiking. They consume traditional media, but also spend considerable time on the internet. The second segment is named urban empty nesters, who tend to be middle-class, older singles and couples with the need to escape. They have no kids at home and primarily live in urban settings. Many are retired, and those that are in the workforce tend to be in white-collar jobs. They have a high rate of repeat visitation and tend to have longer trip durations on PEI. While they're likely to have family and friends living on the island, they still like to stay in paid accommodations. Urban empty nesters enjoy eating at restaurants and some leisure outdoor activity, but traditionally are more likely to seek out indoor entertainment. They respond well to traditional media and are likely to use Facebook. The third segment is named Old-Fashioned Fun. Old-Fashioned Fun visitors tend to be middle-aged or older couples and families. They largely live in rural communities and work in well-paying blue-collar jobs. Old-Fashioned Fun visitors split their time between outdoor activities and taking in ticketed events. They're repeat visitors with friends and family living on the island. They're fond of tradition, spending leisure time close to home and nature. They like the amenities of a hotel and typically stay 3.6 nights. Old-Fashioned Fun visitors are likely to enjoy snowshoeing, hiking, outdoor parks, and ATV snowmobile trekking. Traditional media sources resonate well, but digital plays a role as well. And the fourth final segment we named Young and Social. Young and social visitors tend to be younger singles living alone or with friends. They're largely concentrated in maritime urban centers, with most renting their residence. Young and social visitors balance social nightlife with fitness club memberships and healthy eating. They tend to work in service sector jobs and white collar jobs. They're drawn to museums, theaters, and art galleries, but also enjoy outdoor activities such as ice skating, hiking, and visiting national or provincial parks. They frequent pub-style restaurants and enjoy live performances. They're interested in experiencing local products, but are not package-driven, and their average length of stay is 4.5 nights, and they tend to book directly. And so Tourism PEI has created 2-page personifications for each of these winter custom segments. The visitor personifications are the characterization of visitors that are based on those segmentation variables that we just went over. And these personifications are meant to be a communication tool to articulate the type of leisure visitors that is most likely to visit PEI during the winter spring of 2020-2021. The 2-page personifications provide general descriptions of the visitors like the ones I just went over. And they also provide information on the market size of the visitor segment, demographics information such as average household income, family composition, education, marital status, and age, geographic information to highlight where you're most likely to locate visitors from, and activities that they're most likely to participate in, highlighting relevant winter activities. It touches on accommodation and restaurant preferences, media use, and other travel-related information as well. So while they're 2 pages, they are jam-packed with information. And I'll just take this second before moving on to re-highlight that we're going to go over these in depth and tell you how to read these, how to interpret it, and what it means on Monday next week. And that webinar is being organized by PEI, so please reach out to sign up for that if you'd like to learn more. I'm just going to take 1 second to highlight that Tourism PEI, as Chris has mentioned earlier, and also Joe, is focused on improving communications here. And we're working to make our tourism research products more accessible by creating a single tourism research page on our website. This will provide access to our monthly tourism indicators reports, our latest visitor exit survey results, our regional overnight pleasure visitor profiles, Tourism PEI's recently completed travel survey of PEI residents. Now, this was the first travel study of island residents that I know of, and it's recent, so that's a nice piece of research. The winter visitor segment personifications that I just introduced are available at that link you see at the top of the page right now to be downloaded, as well as a how-to guide on how to read the personifications. The DC-led travel intention and consumer behavior studies. Most recent reports are there as well, and I'll just quickly highlight that waves 4, 5, and 6 of this study will be occurring during this strategy period, the winter-spring period, and the results for both domestic travel by province and our 10 international target markets will be available through this piece of research. So stay tuned for that. And as Chris touched on earlier, Tourism PEI is in the process of developing and deploying an Atlantic provinces intra-regional travel study. The study is being led by our Chief Research Strategist, Dr. Danku Yun. And at this time, we anticipate deployment of the study in mid-December to mid-January and to have results available for industry and everyone else in February. So I'd like to encourage everyone to check out the website there, check out the products and get the information that's useful to you. and always reach out to myself if you have any questions. And so before I hand it back to Chris.
Can you just acknowledge that we will get to the chat?
Oh, yes, of course. We see some stuff coming in the chats here, and we'll try to answer those as we get to the end as much as possible. And so just before handing it back to Chris here, I want to highlight some product relevant research findings to date. And these findings are formulated from many sources and highlighted in Bryanton Consulting's work that's available on the website that I just went over a second ago. So an array of online and published resources have discussed emerging post-COVID-19 travel trends for 2021. There's broad agreement that COVID-19 has fundamentally altered consumer behavior and that it'll have a lasting effect. And therefore, safety and cleanliness are top of mind and here to stay. Future travelers will optimize their travel experiences while minimizing the risk. After lockdowns, visitors will look to reconnect with nature and will avoid crowded places. They're more likely to participate in outdoor activities and experiences, including low-risk outdoor festivals, outdoor sporting events, etc. In a bid to stay away from crowds, travelers are more likely to engage in fully independent travel or fit travel and personalized travel experiences. And there's also a shift to domestic travel with an emphasis on spending time with loved ones and close friends first. There's a strong preference for travel by personal automobile and in some cases recreational vehicles. Provincial and national parks are largely considered safe as they are protected lands, and this appears to have correlated with safety in the mind of consumers. And so travelers will look to avoid crowded areas and visit uncrowded areas such as beaches and charming small towns. And traveling closer to home will allow for both shorter and more frequent stays or trips, So this is likely to mean an increased demand for extended weekend excursions. And so all this to say, these emerging travel trends appear to position PEI pretty well for recovery. PEI's traditional visitor makeup is 83% Canadian and 57% of that comes from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. The Maritimes is a strong VFR market, and these travelers are likely to be the most motivated to travel when they feel it's safe to do so. PEI is largely a rubber tire destination. 75% of our visitors access PEI via the ferry service in Wood Islands. So PEI also has an embarrassment of environmental riches that will likely be highly sought after by future travelers as they look to reconnect with nature, escape the more crowded major urban centers that they may live in. And PEI's management of the COVID-19 crisis and the COVID-19 situation on the province is the envy of much of the world. If we're able to maintain the standing through the second wave, an equitable selling point moving forward. This winter opportunity grid is from Bryanton Consulting's work, so please check that out online for the full deck. It's meant to be a tool that depicts the array of product-related opportunities that we saw across Canada and jurisdictions, and align that with PEI within the COVID-19 and winter lens. And so PEI, as Joe has mentioned, has traditionally not been viewed as a premier winter destination. But as we reviewed the offerings being promoted across the country and elsewhere, we believe that there's considerable opportunity to develop and offer signature winter tourism experiences that range from sleigh rides to snowshoeing, from craft beer tours and culinary experiences to an array of cultural interactions and small festivals. A key aspect for developing PEI's winter tourism offering is answering what is there to do and creating itineraries or bundles of products that encourage a longer stays and clearly communicate to potential visitors there's lots to do and lots to experience. And so that's it for me today. I'm going to hand it back to Chris.
Thanks very much for that, Keith. I will say, folks, realizing that there's a number of questions being generated with the presentation by Keith, there will be an opportunity on Monday where Keith will spend some time going into, as we call it, a deeper dive into the segmentation research, getting into a good overview of the four particular segments. I want to just reiterate a couple of things, folks. And this is really taking us back to the T31 document and where the area of focus lies. So the first area is it's important for us to make sure that we build a solid foundation moving forward. And by focusing on these three elements, we think we will be in a position to not only strengthen our winter spring offering, but really beyond that too for the long term. Communication, we've heard it over and over, and we think this is not only our responsibility, but it's a shared responsibility among stakeholders. And we will work together to make sure that we funnel information both to and from operators as we move forward. The second area is around protecting supply. We see the need to build off current programs and look to new opportunities to protect the financial well-being of the industry. To work with industry to equip them with the tools to operate and thrive beyond COVID by adopting such things as e-commerce, creating new products, and identifying new opportunities or new ways to do business. This may include revised financial programs and the development of opportunities to enhance and advance the industry. The third area of focus is really about driving demand by leveraging existing and developing new products. And as we saw in the schematic by Bryanton Consulting, there is a fairly lengthy list of products available for the winter that we think we can capitalize on and in line with market expectations. And we think there can be an immediate focus here to drive winter tourism. All this to say, folks, we've got a lot of work in front of us. However, saying that, we know that we will turn our attention starting December for an additional engagement exercise looking to the 2021 season as we ramp up planning and industry engagement starting in the next few weeks. So with that, I will turn it over to Brenda to go over where we are with the marketing. Brenda?
Great. Thank you, Chris. We're on the home stretch now, guys. So that's a lot of presentations, and we've talked about everything from the strategy and the tactics that Greg and Joe presented to us. And you heard a lot through Chris and Keith from various initiatives, including research, funding programs, certification. And really, it's how does all of this come together? And, I highlighted this slide by saying teamwork because it really is teamwork amongst a number of different people. And I'll sort of go through that. So stressing the importance of everything we just talked about. So if we look at research to start, like what do we do with all of this? So when it comes to research, the marketing team contributes as much as it can to what the research team's expertise is on developing everything from personifications to some of the other areas we look at. So we ask them questions, we utilize any research that they have, and that ranges from exit surveys, resident sentiment, the environics data we talked about here today, any product specific research, and also Destination Canada's research. So there's a lot of tools that we use. And then it helps us determine who are we going to target, what are these people looking for, and when is it best for us to reach out to them, and also where do we find them. So it's really important that we have all of that information to help make those decisions. And also from a product development side or product destination development, we need to stay on top of what products, events, experiences are in market and are open. It's extremely important when it comes to a winter spring campaign. And so we work closely with Chris's team along with our Visitor Information Center team, and especially all of you, whether it's through RTAs, DMOs, TIPI, or directly, we want to gather all of that information. And we look at the markets and match the products for the best fit when it comes to advertising. And then it all comes together when we start working with our agency. So we take all of our internal intelligence that we get from research and product perspective, and we work with the agency to develop campaigns. They too have additional tools at their disposal, including market-specific data, advertising channel information, programmatic tools, and more. So all of that helps us to select what images you see, the videos that we are going to be using, and the messaging for our campaign. And that's for everything from print or digital, out of home, television. It's really where the rubber hits the road when it comes to marketing. And so, you know, when you look at things, when Keith talked about where you can find these people, he actually can help us pinpoint on a map where you find them. So that helps us if we're doing a digital billboard, where do we find these people? For social buys, it helps us look at what are the psychographics, who is using the type of tool that we want to be using. So all of that puts it together. And everything that we're doing here is really great preparation, not just for 2021, but it's going to take us beyond as well. And I talk about teamwork, and I talked about a lot of internal teams, but actually the most important part of teamwork is all of you. And we really do need to work together to make this happen. We are in extremely challenging times. There's no denying that. And so as we move forward, the silver linings in all of this, I know it was mentioned earlier in the presentation, we haven't really been pushing winter. And, you know, we have some partners who have been pushing winter, which is fabulous. So now we need to supplement that and really start focusing on a new direction that will not just help in this year in these difficult times, but will put us in a great position on a go forward perspective. So what we do need to know is who's open, what products are they offering, anybody working on new products, putting together some packages. A lot of what we're going to be doing is to drive people to our website and specifically to the packaging page. If you look at our Google Analytics, what we find is the page that is most used is where you find packages and opportunities for people to really see what they can pull together. So you will be hearing from Insight Studio, who we are working with right now, looking to find out who's open. We've been doing a lot of work already behind the scenes, so we have a pretty good idea of who is open. We'll be populating that on the Activate Our Island website for locals, and also on the tourismpei.com website for visitors from outside the province. We're working on the premise that we will see the province open up again. Obviously, everything is pertaining to CPHO guidelines, but we certainly want to be ready to hit the play button when the time is right. We also want to help you, so we will be putting together some aggressive marketing campaigns, both on island for when that is all that is available, and off island, be it New Brunswick, Nova Scotia for the winter-spring campaign, and going beyond that for spring. There's some overlap there in spring. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So we also will be looking at, we currently have some opportunities available. Packages for the first time are free to display on our website. There's always been a charge for packages. That is free for the 2021 season. And I would strongly encourage you to work together as an industry. If you don't currently have some packages on our website, please consider that, because as I said, it is very effective when people are looking for bookings. And also we have a number of advertising opportunities through Volume 18 who do our sales for us. In addition to that, what we'd like to do is look at some co-op opportunities over and above what we have with packages and what Volume 18 is currently selling. So we're looking for some new ideas. We're exploring and don't have it available right now, but we will have something available to you soon. Looking at things, some of it might seem old-fashioned, maybe doing double page spreads in newspapers, maybe something similar to what Festivals and Events has done in the past with the what's happening today in the newspaper, on radio. Could be donut advertising on radio. We have all kinds of ideas that we're considering, but we are wide open to ideas coming from all of you. You know, funnel it through TIPI or through your RTA DMOs, and we do want to hear from you because we're looking at opportunities to work together. I also want to give a reminder that basic web listings are free this year as well. So if you don't have your basic web listing registered, please do contact us because we want to ensure that anybody who is operating throughout the winter months, we want to give a very current and accurate picture of the season here on the island. So looking at winter spring campaign, So I'm going to start with really looking at winter. So cozy island winter, and that's sort of an overall theme for our winter campaigns, both on and off island, looking at things like romance, family, outdoors, food, events and activities. And as mentioned earlier, we are working on developing assets, both borrowed and new. So we know that there are some assets out there already. When I say assets, I'm talking photography, video, something that we can use in our marketing. So we have reached out to a number of you, and we do have some great things that already in stock. And we had quite a few, certainly nowhere near the assets that we've had for summer, but we did have a good selection of some winter photography already. But as I said, it is very small, so we are putting some time and effort into that to ensure that we have some good material to make things happen. So we do really want to embrace the season. So I'll talk just very high level about two aspects of the campaign. So the first one is for on island, the Activate Our Island campaign. So many of you are familiar with what we did this summer. Doing an on-island campaign has not typically been part of the mandate of Tourism PEI. We mostly focused on bringing people from off island to the island. And so when COVID hit, obviously we did not have an Atlantic bubble initially, and we started the campaign Activate Our Island, working with Insight Studio Marketing, and they've done a great job. And so we've been able to continue that work with them, really extend the campaign, looking at beyond the summer fall Activate Our Island. So we're going to be challenging islanders to exchange their grumblings about cooler weather and COVID to excitement at the chance of really fully taking advantage of the beauty that surrounds us. And that's all year round. Snowshoes, strolls on the beach. Yes, you can still go on the beach in the winter. Lace up your skates, do all kinds of activities that we have here right on Prince Edward Island. So we're looking, it'll be a campaign with some sub-themes, if you will. And, you know, we're going to be starting with some best local holiday gift ideas. We're throwing around a number of different themes like comfort foods, don't hibernate, activate, beat the winter blues, an island for two, March Madness. These are just some brainstorms that we're going through right now. And we'll also have some spring themes coming up, because this particular campaign is going to be running from December until May. So as we move forward, right now our focus is mostly on winter, but we will be switching it to spring in the next few weeks. The key is to remain nimble, and we realize that. Everything is about CPHO guidelines. We want to be safe. We'll focus on open spaces. We have some really good products to offer, so we will be moving forward with that. When it comes to off-island, starting with winter, so our Dear Mainlander campaign, and a continuation of the campaigns that we've done in the past. Obviously, they don't look exactly the same because times have changed. We are looking for the first time at doing winter advertising in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. Again, CPHO guidelines pending, but our plan right now is to be in market from January till March with the winter campaign. And we are working, I know it was mentioned that the strategy is going to be developed for the spring, fall, or spring, summer, fall for 2021. We can't wait quite that long. So because a lot of work for the 2021 season started this summer, we were doing some shooting. So we are in full force planning for spring, summer, and fall campaign, which would run from early April until October. And again, I keep stressing adhering to CPHO guidelines and adjusting as needed. And so we are working on all these campaigns on the assumption that we'll be able to go out there full force, and we will be ready when the time is right. So that basically sums up the marketing, where we're at with marketing right now. I don't want to neglect mentioning beyond leisure. We really only talked about consumer or the leisure market. We are also doing a lot of work behind the scenes on travel, trade, and media. A lot of it is really just keeping the lights on, keeping our line of communication open with them to ensure that when borders start opening, that we still have that strong relationship. We still appear on itineraries, and we have media who are interested in coming to do press trips. So work is continuing on in a different way, I will say. But things like major marketplaces, like if any are familiar with World Travel Market, which takes place in London every year. It did take place, but it was all virtual. Same thing with the National Tour Association out of the US. So we are keeping our contacts very, very strong so that when the time is right, we will not have lost those relationships. And that's basically it for me from the marketing perspective. And that ends our presentation. So I think we will be
We might
ready
have
to
a
take any of
few,
your questions.
a few questions there, folks, realizing time is getting thin here. So let's see if we can highlight a few questions.
Thanks, Keith.
And bear in mind that on the research side, we'll have a more rich presentation on Monday that we can certainly focus on any Q&As that are applicable to that area.
I see a question there from Bill around getting the data before Monday's webinar.
I guess we could stop.
The personifications and a how-to, Bill, and everybody else is available on that that research page. It looks like Kim shared it there once or twice, maybe. So they're available right now. You can go take a look at them, download them, and reach out to me if you have any questions before Monday. I'll try my best to answer them for you.
Thank you, Keith. Anything else there that you can answer in a fairly quick? Oh.
That was Brenda, Jackie.
Yeah.
Is there a question there?
No. Looks like we're
Okay.
pretty good.
Well, maybe what we'll do, folks, is again, we'll go through these questions and we'll respond offline to them. I will say we'll go to that next slide. Keith, did you?
Yeah.
So, folks, the last, the last slide is something to
And just
leave you
scroll
with,
down to the next one.
and that is next steps, which we think is important. So, first of all, next steps is how do you become involved? We've got a meeting scheduled for next Tuesday, where Tourism PEI, PEI will be meeting with the RTA executive directors and talking about three key areas. One is communication. How do we make sure that the message is going both ways between the operators and the respective organizations? As I said, this is a shared responsibility. We really need to crack this nut in order to advance this strategy and the other strategies that we're working on. We need to figure out how we engage in the winter spring program, and we're going to have a good conversation to make sure that there's on-ramps for operators to become involved, that the RTAs will become involved, PEI, and all the stakeholders have a strong role to play in the programming. And the third area that we're going to focus on in our discussion next week is around learning and education webinars for industry. The challenge will be working with PEI as we develop a full series of webinars and workshops to help you operators prepare yourself going forward, whether it's on the research as we will be doing on Monday, or whether it's on how to package, how to product develop, how do I protect myself in terms of financing. All those things could be on the table for future webinars. So we will be rolling out additional information in the next week or so in terms of how you become involved in certain areas. So we'll leave it at that. That was a great session. A lot of information coming at you. We appreciate those 85, 90 people who jumped on the line with us. Spread the word. This is the start of what we expect to be a great communication going forward. So with that, we thank you for your participation. Thank you for your questions, and we will, as I say, respond offline and post those. And we'll leave you for the rest of the day. Stay healthy, stay safe, and talk to you soon again. Thank you.
I think so.